Ooh.
I'm learning.
Look at you.
Because we didn't pop up that half second between transition.
This rate, you'll just be like the next P. Diddy of White Guy Podcasts.
Or like inevitably give it up.
Yep, we realize this is a lot of work.
That was a lot of work and no pay.
How did Tanis and Mike make it as long as they did? This is so much effort. Again, like a typical white guy. Because the world is full of half-finished podcasts by white dudes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. And on that happy note.
Oh, week 1 is here.
Yeah.
So, Thursday, 5:20 p.m. At least Pacific Standard Time.
That game is either going to be surprising, like as in like the Cowboys keep it close and or blow them out. Like it's really just either like, okay, the Cowboys are competitive or they're just gonna get blown up.
Yep.
I don't see any other situation of like I really don't see the Cowboys blowing up the Bucks just because.
So Dak in play, fairly healthy. I can see them blow up the Bucks because everyone's gonna be shaking off a little rust.
Yeah.
And I feel like what's his name? Bruce Arians. And it doesn't play the vets a whole lot. They're gonna shake some rust. So we're gonna see a little more come halftime, I think. After half.
Yeah. And like the hard part is just like it's a question of obviously the Bucks, their defense strengths their defense. So at that front seven, no one wants to have to block those guys. And as we saw, if they get going, doesn't matter what offense you are, you're going to get derailed. And then also, how good is Dallas's defense?
True. They did do a solid upgrade with the linebacking position, Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
I feel like the D-line hasn't been the same. Their corners, I think they have like one of those young but promising kind of
up and coming.
Yeah. But I don't know. They're going to give up a lot in the air. You got Mike Evans and Godwin.
Yeah. And those are both hard dudes to block like they're. I mean, it's not quite like Metcalf and what's his name levels, but it's a pretty potent combo right there.
I don't know.
Lockett, that's the guy.
Yeah, Lockett. Lockett is hard because he's real speedy. I think he would have an edge on Godwin, but I think Evans has an edge on Metcalf.
I don't know. Like, as we saw, Metcalf is when he wants to, he can get to hill speeds. Like that tackle on that interception run back. I don't know. I think it was against Arizona. Do you remember seeing that one?
It did, and he ran him down. I'm not saying he doesn't have the speed, but like combo of route running, like I feel like a lot of Seattle's yardage comes from the scramble play.
I mean,
the line is not great.
Yeah, well, and that's like the thing. Like, yeah, if you gave Seattle a better O line, man, they'd be scary good on offense just for the pieces they have. Otherwise, because like you figure Wilson, Carson, Metcalf, and Lockett, just have some guys like take a top 5 O line block for them. That's pretty gross offense right there.
It is. I mean, they're going to be tested though against the Colts.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Buckner in the middle. He's been supporting that D line, so they're gonna bring it.
Well, and the Colts have been like again. I still think they were. I think they were dark horse for me last season. I think they're still a dark horse this season because they just seem like. I mean, obviously last year everyone kind of got derailed. Like I still think last year kind of was an asterisk next to it just because it was. You don't go the whole thing like, are we going to have a season? Then like, oh, we got to get this together. Let's get this going, guys.
Yeah, which I mean I would assume play into the injuries because some guys probably aren't super focused on their body like you see. They kind of show up a little more out of shape than they would, knowing I got a season coming, I need to train, and they're like, I'm partying in Mexico.
Yep. Well, then also like I mean, very obviously not everyone got hit as bad by the COVID opt-outs as the Patriots did. Like, honestly, I think they're gonna have a huge turnaround just because you combine the amount of opt-outs they had with their roster turnover. They lost like something crazy. Like it was 70% of their snap productions from 2019 to 2020. They lost. Obviously, a part of it's Big Brady, but still. But
what's most impressive is they were still a top defense for a while.
Yeah,
without a third of their starters on defense.
Yeah, it was. They had the the Vikings problem, where it's like, yeah, they're great defense, but that defense can only hold so long if your offense doesn't do anything. Yeah, I mean, I think also it's really because another example is the Bills. They had Lotulelei sit out last year, and a lot of people didn't realize how big that was because you're talking like that guy's not quite like a Magata level D tackle. But he's more like a Vince Wilfork, where he eats up blocks. He doesn't get the sacks. He doesn't even necessarily get the pressures as much, so he does. But he is a guy that he's kind of like a Donald in that sense, where you single block him at your own risk. But even double block teaming him means like if you are double teaming him, it almost always pays off for the Bills. So I think, I think their defense could actually get a lot better with him back.
Oh, definitely. Like they're one of those lower picks I take for like a defensive fantasy.
Yeah,
like I group them with say New England and the Chiefs because for the most part the Chiefs kind of hold, give me a couple points. New England will go off maybe here and there, or they'll at least hold. The Bills I kind of do the same.
Yeah, it's like I'm still not sure what's going to happen with the Bills though, just because it's like. If I had to pick a team to forfeit a game because of COVID, yeah, like I mean, they're big stars. A lot of them have like been skeptical and they've been fighting to get vaccinated. And it's the NFL's not going to be as forgiving as they were last year and reschedule your game 3 times.
They already put out like if you have to miss a game, guess what? You're going to forfeit.
Yeah. I'm really curious if we are going to see a forfeit, and if so, how long it's going to take. Like, I would think it would only be in the first half of the season that we see one. But it's like, if you see one in the first half, though, I think every other team is going to quickly get 100% vaccination rates. Because once one team has to take a forfeit, all the other organization coaches are going to be like, yeah, no, we can't risk that. they don't want to mess around. I mean, unless... There's someone tanking, like, pulling a Jacksonville.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I would agree, but it seems like they're legally not allowed to do a whole lot about it since Jacksonville's getting investigated because they took into account, are you vaccinated or not?
Yeah, for cutting.
Yeah, cut people who weren't vaccinated if that was like a make or break. So
yeah, but I mean, let's be honest, peer pressure is probably a huge thing on a team. And if all of a sudden the whole team decides they'd rather, swallow their pride just to not forfeit, you got to be a really big name to be able to hold out against an entire team pressuring you, I think.
I think a huge tell might be the first, 2 to 3 games.
Yeah,
you get a feel. You get a feel of how your team's doing, and if you're, wrecking these first few games, you're like, okay, we have a chance. Yeah, I'm gonna go get vaccinated.
Yeah.
I'm not risking that.
Yeah. That'd be a silly one to do. Man, let's see. So, do you want to go into the fantasy or the pick'ems? You got all sorts of notes here.
I do. And I mean, we could continue the train of pick'ems because we basically went through the first 2 games on the schedule. That's the Iron Order, which was Thursday night, Cowboys, Bucks. Those expectations. Seahawks, Colts followed that. Jaguars, Texans, at least are next on my list here.
I think, even ignoring the state the Texans are in, for example,
Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, but even ignoring that, I think Jacksonville is again having a lot of things come to the right place, especially offensively. You look at some of the stats, especially where they weren't amazing, but their offense was a lot better in a lot of ways, and that was without really like who was it? Who was their starting quarterback? It wasn't Minshew for most of the season. It was what's his name? Can't even remember.
Bulk.
Well, yeah. Either way, like I think their offense will be a lot better, and so I think they could play spoiler in a lot of games. Not necessarily playoff good, but I do think they're going to be one of those teams that like turns around and maybe almost hits the playoffs or is like wild card exit.
Yeah, I can see them do that. Be like a late exit of the playoff race, unless the players are just so against. Is it Urban?
Yeah.
Now? I always get him and Saban confused.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, they're two sides of the same coin, and
definitely. But like, if the players respond to him well and they perform, I do think they have an underrated offense with DJ Chark. Who Marvin Jones now? They have a new veteran whiteout season.
Well, and there's also another guy. He was actually, I think it was someone I drafted because I was reading up on him, like, and actually reading about how he did down the stretch, and it was actually surprising.
Yeah, they have Marvin Jones Jr., so it's right there. DJ Chark was the guy, like, on and off people's fantasy boards.
He burned me so much.
He burn you so hard, but then it's like you stare at him, it's like that. I'll give you one more chance, and he'll get you, 60 points.
That or it was like
you
burned me 2 games. I'm gonna bench you. Then the game you bench you when he goes like, "Oh, this is what you get."
Yep. I'll show you. But no, they're definitely underrated. I mean, James Robinson he had a 1,000-yard season last season. They don't expect him to do the same this season. I don't know why, but
yes, that is surprising.
Yeah, because they expect ETN to be the man this season.
I mean, how long is he out now?
As far as I've heard, the season he's on.
Yeah, so he's clearly not the man this season.
But apparently, Bulky and I want to say Saban again. Urban. Yeah. Saban Urban. I'm just gonna call him Saban Urban. But
I think I never have a hard time remembering him, but that's just because he was sitting at Utah. So I always remember the difference.
Yeah, but I mean, apparently they're working a lot of Carlos Hyde into the mix, at least from what I've heard from like their training camp and their practice, and like okay, Bulky has a hard on for Hyde, which is cool, whatever. But I think Robinson's gonna get all the production.
Yeah, but also it could be one of those like where Hyde ends up being the change of pace, bring him in, just like bowl people over third downs, goal lines, give Robinson a rest, which I mean isn't. He's great in those roles. He was doing that at Seattle for a while, and he was also capable of taking over when Carson went down. So I understand why someone would be high on Hyde. I think it was Seattle.
He's a strong dude. He runs through the A gap. Like he's up the middle. One cut will get you yards. But
he's not the long-term answer, though. Like I definitely understand why Etienne is on there.
Yeah, and James Robinson, this is just the second year.
Yeah.
So that's why I expect him to do well. And their offense is sneaky good. Same with the defense.
Yeah, but I'd be okay with them actually like turning around and becoming a legitimate contender for more than just one season. I've never had anything against the Jacks. It's the underdog. People like to root for the underdog, and they're the new Lions. They are the underdog. They've been like one good season in 30 years.
Yeah. It was their second season in the NFL when they were an expansion team or something like that.
Yeah. Well, then they also had that one a few seasons ago where they were in the playoffs. That top defense then got blown up, but
yeah,
it's
part. Which more to add to that underdog later in the list, but like next up's like Eagles Falcons.
That one is really hard to gauge.
Fun to watch. I think that one would be fun.
Yeah, like it's that one. I can't make a beat on because the Eagles, they have the tools there to go on a run, and they've like shown the capability. But also, we've shown that they can get derailed by who knows what. And then same thing with the Falcons. It's like I saw a stat that what was the biggest reason why it's such a question mark is not having Jones. Like their record and Ryan's stats when he doesn't have Jones in a game is terrible. Yeah, so
I remember seeing that.
It is an interesting to see if they've gotten enough pieces to make him not miss Jones. Because when they have Jones, they're running like the Falcons. I don't know how they always do it, but they are always have an offense.
So I feel like Jones is going to eat up at least a double team, if not a triple team. So he's going to eat up at least 2 corners in the safety or 2 corners with maybe like a linebacker help. Like he's going to eat up, some corners, which is going to open up a dynamic guy like Ridley, or when they had like at least a tight end who could catch and fall for 2 yards. Like
which they picked up that is it Kylie Pitts? So they could potentially have a beast of a tight end.
Yeah, I mean I've picked him up where I could. I did. I took a risk because it's like, okay, my Kelsey, Kittle, Waller's gone.
Yeah,
might as well try and take Pitts at 4.
Once the big 3's gone, it's like it's kind of a crapshoot with the tight ends. Yeah, that I think has the potential to be the most entertaining, but it also has the potential to be an absolutely meaningless game amongst 2 teams that don't make the playoffs, and there's no way to know.
Totally go that route. Because I mean, to me, I'd want to see what Hurts does, and I definitely want to see what Devonta Smith does. I know you took him in our league.
Yeah,
I haven't seen him in other leagues. It's like the last receiver pick. So I'm like, he might be the guy this year.
Yeah. I mean, I viewed him the way I viewed Jefferson when he came into the league. Like, even ignoring being a Vikings fan, I was like, okay, he is a guy you take. So, worst case of worst, the rookie on your bench, that is like your floor. So he's not like, but your ceiling is way up here, potentially.
High ceiling, worst case, you swap him out free agency at week 3, 4.
Yeah. Well, even then, like, that's the hard part with those guys, because that was like Jefferson's like, coming in, you had Thielen, he was the man, and so he was competing against like a whole bunch of other guys, so they kind of like tried to ease him in, and it wasn't really to game 4 or 5 when he really solidified. Like he had flashes and they had like solid games, but that was when they were like, okay, you are now,
number 1.
We're rolling with you. We Diggs who we got Jefferson. So it could be one of those like where I think he's a guy you, even if it's game 4, maybe in 5, you still sit on him, just because like he's worth, I think, waiting until at least halfway through the season, because by then it's if he hasn't started doing something at halfway point, then yeah. But again, it's like unless you need the bench slot, what's the harm in just sitting on him for 6 games?
That's true. By that halfway point, you can make that call because either A, you need that bench slot because you're in the race for playoffs, and maybe you need someone to just push you over the edge, or maybe you just keep him because you're already making a run. And
exactly. And the other nice part is, like, let's say he hasn't like blown up, but he's still been solid. Either A, you keep him as like a good contributor, or you trade him to someone who needs a wide receiver, just anything, and get something else in return. So it's that one. I think I'm curious. But another one I think I am curious just because it's another 2 teams that could be a playoff matchup is Chargers at Washington. Those are another teams that
I could see that as a wild card. If not Washington taking the division again. I know like last season was kind of weird, and I think this season's gonna be weird for the NFC East in general.
Oh yeah,
you don't know what's gonna happen with all of them. It's even the Cowboys with the success Dak was having, they were having a rough time putting games away.
Yeah.
So that defense is better, but is Washington more put together? And they've been compared to the 2019 Niners where they could sneak in. Like,
here's the thing though, it's like I think a lot of people really are underselling them because you look at all the tools they had, even on offense. Look at what they were able to do with the quarterbacks they had. You had Alex Smith coming back from a miracle, and who clearly was even when he came back, he wasn't going to be the same. And then their other guy was what? Dwayne Haskins? And there was some third guy that I can't remember. It's realistically...
That's the guy who was working a job and a student.
Oh, yeah. So, like, you're talking...
Masters.
Are any of those better than Fitzpatrick when he's playing well? Like, just... And even, like, average it out, like, just overall... Are any of them as a big of a deep threat as Fitzpatrick?
And I think that guy is Taylor Iniki. I think he's actually second stringer.
Yeah. Which, I mean, well, no reason not to keep him second stringer. Guy played in the playoff. And he didn't do terrible, too. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Like, I remember watching that game against, who were they playing? Who did they play in the first round of the playoffs? Or maybe it was like, no, it wasn't one of the playoffs. I think it actually... They played someone, and it was actually like, everyone's like, oh, they're going to get blown up. And really the only thing they lost is because Alex Smith went down literally right before. Because they still barely got knocked out.
It might have been like final week 17. Because I know Alex Smith was like on the cusp of being able to start the playoff game, but they decided not to let him. Because they played Tampa first round, and it was 31-20.
That was it. Yeah, that was the game. I remember watching that. Because again, like, Heineke was the starting QB. They barely lost. I'm like, dude, I honestly think if you had Alex Smith, they would have won that game. I really do.
I do too.
Which is really sad because, like, I don't know how anyone could have rooted against Alex Smith making a run last year.
I don't know either. And I'm gonna... I already have this in my mind, but they need to name that Comeback Player of the Year award after him.
Oh, yeah. No question.
Comeback Player of the Year.
Like, I don't care that he left after the end of the year. Like, I'm sorry. You do not come back from that sort of... You do not almost lose your leg to make it back on the field.
Like, I don't know if you've seen... So...
the pictures?
Without the braces, without those bands on him. How is because they removed a lot of muscle tissue, and it's like he's on bones. Like,
oh yeah, there was a pretty big expose I read about it. Like, they were like, where they just literally like, here's this big long interview, and it was after the season where they're like, it was right before he officially decided to retire, but it was like the big one. And I was just reading the article, and I'm just like, he not only did he legitimately almost lose his leg, they weren't even sure if he was going to live. Like, it got bad. So, yeah, 100%.
Yep.
It is now the Alex Smith Award. I don't care what everyone says.
Analyst now, so good for him.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm on board with that. Like, I think Washington's going to be another sneaky good team. They're probably going to go neck and neck with the Chargers, unless I can't remember much about the Chargers defense. So the Chargers defense is very Swiss cheesy this season. They might tear apart.
Well, it's one of those, like, I feel like even their defense was one of those where they had flashes and like solid games, but other time they felt derailed. So it's all it takes is just one season where everything clicks for you just enough. I mean, look at the Giants twice. Their defense, even though it was great, it just clicked at the right time, and they won Super Bowls. And their offense with Herbert. Yeah,
it's gonna depend on how he comes back, but
yeah. But it's like, I mean,
same guy last season.
Yeah, it's honestly, if you tell me, if someone from the future said, "Hey, the Chargers are going to the Super Bowl this year," I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be like, "Okay, yeah, I can see that." I wouldn't put money on it, but it's also one of those, like, I wouldn't. It's not someone I'd be like, "No, that's ridiculous." It's not like coming and saying, Browns are going to knock out like the Packers in the Super Bowl. Where I'm like, that's just absurd. Come on.
You need to shush.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised either. They have a good D line. As far as I remember, let's see. Their starting corners: Chris Harris, Asante Samuel Jr., second string. So he's a rookie. So it's that potential defense, but their offense is still really good. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Austin. They're back from injury. If Austin Eckler looks like how he did at the beginning of the season last season, He'll go.
Anyone who slept on Eckler in fantasy, I think, is going to regret it. Unless you have like a McCaffrey or someone who's clearly like, yeah, you go with them.
Oh, especially PPR.
Yeah, I was going to get him. Like, I think the only reason why I didn't because when he would have been there, I already had 2 other dudes, so it was a choice between like him, Kelsey, or someone else. And I was like, got to go with Kelsey. That was the only reason why I didn't pick up Eckler instead. Because
get that number 1 tight end.
Yeah. No, that's gonna be a pretty good one. Another one where like it could be though, like the Falcons, Eagles though, is the Panthers, Jets. Could be 1 or 2 playoff teams. Could also just be a pillow fight between 2 teams who mean nothing.
Yeah, I hope the Jets can make at least. It can at least make 3/4 of the season while being in the picture.
Yeah,
bare minimum.
I have nothing against the Jets. Again, it's just like the Jags. They're just one of those cursed franchises where I'm like, and I have no animosity. Yeah, I have no animosity against the Jets. It's not like, I mean, really, there's only a few franchises where I actually always root against. But I'd still be okay. Like, yeah, cool. Jets wet it. I could survive. Same thing with Panthers, really. The Panthers have actually like always been one of those like my. You have like your team, then you have like that stable of 3 or 4 teams. Where like, yeah, but they're also my second places.
Yeah,
Panthers have always been one of those.
If you move up, just don't be my. But it's okay if you have a winning season.
Yeah. If I have to go with the second choice, I'm okay with you. Basically. And again, they're another one of those teams where they have the pieces. Like they showed flashes, and I don't think people really understand how bad. What was his name? Was it Kyle Allen? Whoever that one quarterback they had. The guy who took over for Cam. I know he's gone.
I thought they had Bridgewater last season.
Well, no. So they had Bridgewater. This was let's see, what was the name? Let me find the guy's name because I'm trying to remember. So they had Kyle Allen in 2019 who took over when Newton went down.
They thought
he was terrible.
Yep.
And then they bring in Bridgewater, who again, like, I just think it's hard to hold last seed against Bridgewater because coming from New Orleans to a Carolina team that was hurting, like, it's hard to like. So they could potentially be in a better position, especially like honestly, whenever you have McCaffrey, it's hard to write someone off.
Yeah, I mean, you have McCaffrey, and I feel like he's guaranteed 100% because he was ready back last season, but they're like, no, that's sucked. But I think he's back. Robbie Anderson is, like that pop on and off wide receiver. DJ Moore is up and coming.
I don't even think DJ Moore is up and coming. Honestly, like if you really look at considering who he's had throwing to him the last 2 seasons, he's still been a pretty solid QB. Like I think he was maybe not last year, but I know in the year before, even with Kyle Allen, he still was like in the top 15 fantasy points. Yeah.
He had a 1,000-yard season.
And then on top, they also have Robbie Anderson, who if Moore's not on, Anderson was also a great receiver. Oh, yeah. And that's again, this is like with Kyle Allen throwing to you. They were still solid receivers.
So the only reason I say up and coming is because he's in his 4th season. No, 3rd season. He's in his 3rd season.
Okay.
That's the only reason I say that. But yeah. I mean, I've drafted him in fantasy because he's definitely not fitting second, even just that always starter right now.
Yeah, I think the big question mark is again how much of Sam Darnold's struggles is because he's a bad player versus working under Adam Gase. That's going to be the big thing because the next good example of that is Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah.
So that's the other reason why I'm like I'm not confident, but I also wouldn't be surprised if at the very least they are again at Jacksonville playing spoilers, upsetting some people, maybe making a run that falls apart at some point. But I could see them turning things around and being a lot better than people are giving credit for.
I kind of do too. I could see Darnold turn up like a Tannehill And especially with a dynamic running back like McCaffrey, like how Tannehill has Henry. You got something to lean on a little bit. He didn't really have much with the Jets. He had Gore for a minute.
Which, the Angels wonders.
Yeah. Which he did pretty well there, but like he didn't have that guy taking attention.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so I kind of expect him to do well. Personally.
Which that's also why I'm still not sure about the Jets, because like, and here's the thing, like, so my personal views on Zach Wilson as a Utah fan aside, especially ignoring all that, I still I don't know. I think a lot of people are like already 100% sold. I'm like, guys, I've seen this before. So temper your expectations, especially even ignoring who he is. We're talking about the Jets here. And while they do have a much better coach, it's still the Jets. And who here would be willing to bet that yes, the Jets have turned it around already without any evidence?
Yeah, I see like if they get a few losses back to back, I could see there being more issues, especially since it's a lot of pressure coming from the front office, not so much with the coaching staff. Yeah, they're an organization that's got problems, kind of like the Dolphins.
Oh yeah,
right now the Texans even, but theirs a little more player based.
Yeah,
their issue was with the coach; he's gone. So,
yeah, I mean, but another part is also it's like, look, so their three starting their starting weapons are Tevin Coleman, Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder, Keenan Cole, Tyler Kroft. Like, it's not bad, but again, it's like, if you look at that lineup, is that something you think like, yeah, these guys are gonna? I think they still have a couple seasons of like really building up that team before they actually are like established. And it also remains to see if they're gonna pull it off or not. It's hard to say with the Jets.
Yeah, they'll go through their own growing pains. As long as Zach Wilson flashes, I think they'll stay competitive. Corey Davis was a decent receiver that they got from Tennessee, who you see further down on the roster, Elijah Moore. Apparently, he showed a lot of really good promise, like a lot of promise in preseason. So he'll probably work into the starting lineup, especially since Crowder right now is labeled as out. But again, they'll probably be competitive. They probably won't win a lot, though.
Yeah,
I'll agree with you there.
Let's see. What other? Oh, then I guess the only other 10 o'clock game we haven't talked about is, I think this one is obviously a playoff game, is the Steelers-Bills.
Oh, there's 3.
You're right, because we haven't done. There are 2 other teams. Yeah, still Steelers-Bills. That one. I'm sorry, it's like, I don't know how you can count against the Steelers. I don't know how they manage to do it pretty much every season, but they are a playoff team until proven otherwise.
I don't know how they do it either. Like I'd say they lost a step on the O-line, but they really haven't, because they lost J.J. Watt.
Oh, so Watt? No, it was
the other Watt, TJ. They have him.
Yeah, no, I think the big thing was it Pouncey? I don't know. I can't remember if it was Pouncey or someone. They just had like one of Pouncey. So like he was the anchor of their O-line for like multiple, 9-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro, and he retired. So I think that really is actually the biggest hit to them, more than anything else. I think that's going to be the guy they miss the most.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but again, every year we're like, oh yeah, no, Steelers ain't gonna make it, and all of a sudden we're like, okay, they're in the playoffs somehow.
You cannot count them out, because somehow their ability to draft wide receivers.
Yeah.
If Roethlisberger stays healthy, and then even the backup, Mason Rudolph, he can hold his own. He can manage the game.
Yeah.
Especially if they have a running back in place, which they might now with Najee Harris. So yeah, they're gonna be dangerous.
And then the Bills are the Bills.
Yeah, they're the young guns right now, I feel.
They are definitely my second place team just because it's like they're the only franchise that knows the pain of losing 4 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Granted, they had it worse because it was 4 years in a row. At least the Vikings were, spread it out to ease the pain, but still. So I always kind of root for them. I've always you know what? Like my dream scenario is Bills Vikings in a Super Bowl, just because they're the only team where it's like, okay, if the Vikings can't win it, that's who I want to see win it more than anyone else. Any other team, I'm like, come on, guys.
That makes sense. And then you'll see a bunch of people jump through tables.
Yeah, who doesn't like that?
I appreciate it. I appreciate that we do that in Buffalo. That's
the other thing. Also, it's like, it's Buffalo. They need that. There's not much else going on in Buffalo.
Got it.
Yeah, but you're right. There are those other 2 games I missed. Those other 2 ones.
There's 3. So there's our teams, and then there's the Cardinals Titans.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. I mean, so let's do here. Let's just get yours out of the way.
Niners Lions.
Lions.
I have no idea how it's going to turn out. So
I mean, I think you guys are going to win it.
I would think so too. And I keep telling myself this as reassurance that people put it in Goff's favor that he knows the Niners defense, but he has not performed well against them.
Yeah.
Like they're like, he knows Fred Warner's looks. I'm like, no, Fred Warner knows his looks. He's picked them off at least once in every game so far, going back 2 years.
Yeah.
So as long as they hold the offense, I don't know how their defense looks. So as long as our offense can perform.
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at it is even ignoring all the other factors, because the Lions, again, they're one of those teams that just cursed franchise can never seem to get the pieces they need. But if you really look across the board, look at it this way. Do you really think the Lions are a better team than the Rams?
No.
There you go.
I don't.
Because that's the real thing. It's I think 1 for 1, pretty much every position is pretty much a downgrade from the Rams to the Lions. So the situation Goff was in, if he had a hard time beating the Niners on the Rams, I don't know how he's going to beat them with the Lions. I just don't.
To me, ideal situation is that the Niners can show some promise and more or less slaughter them.
Yeah.
When your top wide receiver is Tyrell Williams, your second is Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is an awesome name.
Awesome name. Mediocre player.
Yeah. And then your starting running back is DeAndre Swift with Jamal Williams right behind him.
Yeah. The only thing they have really going for him is Hawkinson. He is their shining star.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I think he's going to be a fantasy go-to, maybe, if he could stay healthy. Because he's going to be the target.
I will say, though, I am very jealous of them because they picked up Sewell. I really, really want the Vikings to trade up and stab him because I honestly think he is going to be one of those Jonathan Ogden style players where he is a all-pro anchoring that line for decades until he retires. So, and that's the thing. It's if their O-line clicks and if he gets up to speed, maybe all these guys that were like, oh, what if they haven't done anything, all of a sudden, come together. But it's just, I just don't see it still.
I don't either. And that's what's that ideal situation. Of course, you want your team to blow them out every time, get that win.
Yeah.
But with the team that the roster's not there yet, the coaching staff is new, and their head coach is a little crazy. Yeah, I kind of hope
that's fair.
Pull it off because then that shows more promise in my team than it would if they're fumbling around and kind of just squeaked out a win. It's oh, they got a lot of things to clean up.
Yeah. But I mean, I think you guys lucked out. It's until proven otherwise. The Lions are probably the one team you want to play week 1 just because they are good ease into it.
That's what I'm hoping for. And I mean, speaking to ease into it, there's also your matchup against the Bengals.
I don't know about it, man. It's
a little more challenging, especially with your your secondary is going to maybe have some issues because they have a good receiving core.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the good receiving core, when he was healthy, bro, did well. But it's just. I mean, I still think there's just way too many question marks with the Vikings right now. Like, a lot of people are high on them, and they always are. But it's just. I will say, though, that the trend says that they will make the playoffs this year because Zimmer, they alternate under Zimmer. They've been every other year, playoff team, home, playoff team, home. So we saw how last year went. So the trend holds up during the playoffs. But, I mean, I don't know how. Well, actually, I do know how because they overpaid for Cousins. And that's been eating up their contracts. And also, I just don't think Zimmer's philosophy and how he approaches things. I think they have the tools that they could beat the Bengals. But also, if the Bengals blow them up, I wouldn't be shocked. That's the reality.
So I couldn't see them blow them up. I could see it being a shootout because just thinking of the Bengals defense, like there's nothing that sticks out in my mind.
Yeah.
Like I'll pull up the roster, but there's nothing that comes to mind that's like going to be a roadblock, like an overwhelming D line.
See that, and that's the thing, though. It's not that they have an overwhelming defense, but it could very well be a combination of their defense is okay enough versus the Vikings' offensive line. Like, yeah, a lot of people were huge on the Darisaw. But the thing is, like, they did not cut Dozer. That guy has consistently been, I think, at the bottom, if not the worst graded lineman at his position for 2 seasons straight. So he is literally one of the worst linemen in the league, and they kept him. I think at one point, you had only one guy, one of their starters, was grading in the top 20. Their average ranking was most their starting linemen were grading in the bottom third of the league. And it's just, if that line doesn't come together, if you can get in Cousins' face, it's over.
Yeah.
And if that line's not together, it's real easy to get in Cousins' face. So that's why I could see it being blown up. Because their offense versus the defense, if Vikings defense is constantly having to go out because, fumble, turnover, sack, their defense gets tired real fast. Even with Hunter back, even with Griffin, they're going to get tired. And I'd still we had, I think it was 3 rookies in our secondary last season. Yeah, they've got a year under their belt, but that doesn't mean they're still quite there yet.
Yeah.
So
you'd hope they'd be in end of season last year form, but really you're going to regress a little bit because of the off season.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'd watch it.
Yeah. I'd watch it if we got it, but again, West Coast. Downside of being a West Coast resident of a Midwest team.
Yeah, that's fair. Rounding out the 10 a.m.s is Cardinals Titans, and I hope the Titans just steamroll
them. Division bias aside, I think that is also potentially a playoff preview because Titans are still the Titans. I think at this point, Ryan Tannehill showed he is able to do what he needs to win. I was very wary of him last year. I wasn't convinced on them just because it's, Tannehill could have just been a Case Keenum where he had one good season and turned it and then collapsed.
Yep.
But the Cardinals, they're another team where it's like they did just lose. I want to say Butler, but I don't think that's it.
They did.
Yeah.
Yes. He's the big name corner they've had. Yeah, they lost him. He's on a weird list where it's potential retirement.
Yeah. That is a big blow. But if you really look they were a solid team last year. They were competitive against good teams and lost most of their games against playoff teams were pretty close. So, and then I'm sorry, Kyler Murray is another one of the guys where it's he can be a one-man offense. And then there's already other tools around him. Like, as we were talking, like, Matt Ryan's probably really missing Julio Jones, and I don't see how Kyler Murray isn't going to be thrilled to have Julio Jones throwing to. And then...
Tannehill?
No. Because didn't Jones end up on the Cardinals?
Nah, Jones is in Tennessee.
Oh, is he in Tennessee? Okay, yes. I remember the matchup, not the team.
Yes.
Yes.
That makes sense.
But yeah, it's like, I mean, the Cardinals, I think they have the offense. It's a question of if their defense can actually improve and keep them out of shootouts. That's, I think, what it's going to come down to with the Cardinals.
Yeah, they did lose like their big boy lineman. The only reason I know that is because he's an ex-Niner who retired. And I mean, Murray gets flushed out of the pocket a lot, so yeah, it's going to come down to if he can make the plays, get the ball to Hopkins or AJ Green, and if AJ Green is prime, at least ish, AJ Green, I think they have a chance, especially with Edmonds and Connor as kind of a 1-2 punch on the ground.
Yeah.
Their defense has been good. Like, in general, like, the defensive line's been okay. Like, gets the quarterback, creates some pressure, and their secondary has been passable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, they got Fotu. I am a fan of Fotu. He was one of the better... out of Utah puts out good D linemen, and he was one of the better linemen we've had in a while. Like, he wasn't Lotulelei level, but he was still a great player. So, and then JJ Watt, he's not the same JJ Watt he used to, but he's still JJ Watt.
He'll eat up probably a double team here and there.
Yeah, and he's still good for some pressure. Yeah, so I think they are one of those, like another one of those. If you tell me they're going to playoff run, maybe in the Super Bowl, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't pick them, but I wouldn't be blown away.
Same. I mean, the only questions I have about them long term is just their resiliency. Like,
yeah,
Hopkins is already questionable. AJ Green came off a big injury. He sat out last season to make sure he was healthy for this season. But they're all older guys, and then behind those receivers, you have Randall Moore, Andy Isabella, and Christian Kirk.
Yeah, their depth is not there. That's for sure.
Yeah, then as soon as you lose JJ Watt, you kind of don't have another big name besides your Fotu.
Yeah, and again, he's a rookie, so who knows how it's going to be.
True.
Oh, he's essentially a rookie. Contributor. Yeah. Yeah, so again, it's...
The depth isn't there. But the week 1, yeah, they'll have it out with Tennessee.
Yeah.
I mean, they have their own similar issues, because behind A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Josh Reynolds, Westbrook Ikine. So they're similar.
I am curious to see how much losing Smith hurts the Titans, because he was Tannehill's, like, crutch. He really was. Like, he was, nothing's open and Henry's struggling, go to Smith. The dude was a solid tight end for him last year.
Yeah, they'll stay afloat. They have Jeff Swain.
He's not bad, but again, it's like, really, if you list the offensive weapons they had, Tannehill, Henry, and really Smith. When your tight end is one of your big 3, that's a pretty big side. He's a pretty key part of your offense.
It's fair. And when he first started with Tennessee, he had Delaney Walker, so he's always had that tight end, big man scapegoat.
Yeah. So, and that's another reason why I'm still not sure with him, because
that's fair.
It's like, again, like it's said in their first episode, like Henry, he's a good running back, but it's one of those. He is in that range where you start to see drop-offs, you start seeing injuries, they take long to recover. And we saw it with AP. Like, I mean, he lasted a couple of years, but also it's like one of those, I definitely put him as he's at the top end of how longevity for that type of back. So it's a question of, like, is Derrick Henry also going to be able to maintain that production for that long? That's what I think is going to be interesting to see. And
I mean, it's the season. I'm kind of testing a theory. And it's also based on some Matthew Berry analytics, of course. But it's like if after that third year, to kind of just take that second back on the roster, if they're young, if they're either first or second year, I kind of just see what happens, because it feels like a lot of running backs at their third year, they're a little more prone to injury.
Yeah.
Something happens. It happened with David Johnson. He was a big guy his second year. He went, first overall everywhere. I made sure, or I think it was his third year, because I want to say his second year. That's when I got him in most leagues, because he was kind of a sleeper going into the season. But that following season, that third season, got injured. He's been kind of on and off roster since then. Like, it's been problematic, and I'm worrying on running backs to follow that trend. I don't necessarily like it.
They really, it's sad to say, but I would say the vast majority of running backs really only have 3 to 4 good years in them. It's that not to say that they don't play that long, they can't be like solid contributors, but it's like really like you are the guy, dominant back. Most of the time you have 3-4 years of really being a dominant back, maybe 5 if you're one of like the all decade greats. And it's just because, especially like you get so much punishment, it falls off.
And I would say,
and their second string is a dude who they drafted out of Boise State in 2017. So I'm curious to see how that pans out for him if he does go down.
Like, I would say like someone like Raheem Mostert. He's been in the league for a long time.
Yeah. Also that's an interesting one too, because
he wasn't running back the whole time. He's a special team guy. So
it's like really, so compare the Niners, they are a running back friendly offense, but in a plug and play sense. The Titans, it's not that they're running back friendly, it's that Derrick Henry is just so good that they can build an offense around him. That's why he's more in the mold of AP, where it's like, you can't swap out like AP in his prime. You can't just plug in anyone there and they're going to be great. Like he made stuff out of nothing. Whereas the Niners, we saw you guys got down to like your third or fourth string dude, and you still were running.
Yeah. Which I love, but also it's like Mostert has failed with other teams like the Dolphins, Jets, and because it is friendly and because he can do the one cut and gone.
Yeah.
So that's nice too.
Yeah. That's a good spot for him, because if you are an aging running back, you want to end up in a Niners type system where it's like, we can throw you in and you're gonna have a season.
You're gonna have a massive lane. You can run for at least 500 yards on limited carries.
Yep.
But we're finally getting into the afternoon games now.
Which these ones I think have a lot of. These are the ones I'm really interested to see, just because of how they shake out. Like, just looking at this list here, I think there's quite a few teams on here that could potentially be good, but also could just be terrible. And it's really hard to say.
Yeah. We can start with Browns Chiefs, which is one of those underdog teams. But I don't like it. I have, in the past, I'm like, okay, come on, Browns at least making the playoffs. They did last season. But it's like the fans and the players get super arrogant, cocky, and it's like...
Which is funny, because how is it Browns fans are arrogant? What happened, man? This is the Browns we're talking about.
What happened to the humble?
Yeah. Well, I'm not a fan of Beckham. I'm not. Like, as a player, he was great, but just as his personality, he's
a receiver.
Yeah, he's another Ocho Cinco. He's another one of those guys where it's just, to them, the spectacle and the showboating is oftentimes just important or more so than being a solid. Compare them to Randy Moss. Randy Moss was a cocky son of a bitch. He could be arrogant. But he brought a show. he was like, yeah, he knew he could do it. He followed through pretty much every season.
It's true.
Beckham, yeah, he quite half the time he's just dropped off really since that Super Bowl.
Hurt.
Yeah,
it's his problem. He just keeps getting injured, and I could see him be prime again.
Yeah,
I also think the Browns' offense is crippling him because they're forcing him the ball instead of spreading it out, creating opportunities for him. Because when
it's funny though, I think he's just as much a part of why they're forcing the ball, though. That's the thing.
That's true. And I think he's hit a point in his career because even your Randy Moss, he hit a point in his career where he wasn't as much of a diva. He became more of a leader and, just kind of contributor and contributed to another Super Bowl with the Patriots. And even when he was with the Niners, they made it to the Super Bowl, but he was a contributor. He wasn't that mouthy dude. He was.
He had that maturity that these other guys seem to lack, where it's like he can put it away when he's like, okay, this is what I got to do.
Yeah, I think if OBJ can get that, I think the Browns would be a better team as a whole for it.
Yeah, 100%.
It would push that offense to another level.
Yeah.
Because it's annoying to say, but their offense is like one of the best, just based on the tandem running backs they have, and then you have Landry and OBJ.
On paper, their offense should be. I mean, even they have Hooper at tight end.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, I think going back to like why they bug people so much, like Mayfield's another part of that. He has definitely been humbled. Like coming out of college, he was arrogant. He thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, but he came in. Yeah.
That's why you got the comparisons to Mayfield, or not Mayfield, that's him.
Yeah, compared to himself.
Dude, compared to himself. Mansell.
Yep. But also, like, I think definitely the last few seasons, he's really like accepted, like, you know what? Okay, I was stupid. I was a cocky kid. So like, I've warmed up to him from that aspect, and he has shown that in turn, I think, has helped his game, where he's trying to play smarter, and it's worked. It's just a question of, can he continue to improve? And that I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, that I'm not sold on yet, because I've seen like him mature a little bit more, same as you, and like it's almost like he's at the ceiling right now.
Yeah,
and he needs to be able to push past that by making some plays, and he's most effective when he's managing the game.
Mm-hmm.
In the running backs, heavily. He's able to throw to Jarvis and maybe whoever else when Odell's injured, because he can spread it out, which opens everything else up. But definitely, I haven't seen anything like the tight window throw or, like a game winner. I don't know if I'd call his number. I'd rather call Chubb's number.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If the game's on the line, you have to pick one of those players to take over the game. I don't know who would pick Mayfield over Chubb. I really don't. I mean, but I think they have a solid defense, though. That's the thing. It's like I even all those issues aside, they're one of those franchises like, you know what? I'd be down for them finally turning the corner and actually having consistently decent seasons. I'd be totally fine with that. Because it's like, also I think for the overall health of the game, it's better if you don't have those punchy bags that are like, free win.
I mean, that's how I view them too. I think that they'll have a good season. I think that they could make the playoffs again. That's if they can control the attitude.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that got the better of them last season.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of that hype of like, and I think they really bought into it. They really bought it like, yeah, we're different. We turned the corner. It's like, you made the playoffs, but that doesn't mean you turned the corner. Do it multiple seasons. Progress further in the playoffs. That's when you've turned the corner. Not one season done. The Jags made the playoffs. That doesn't mean they turned the corner, clearly.
Oh, definitely. But yeah, they're a dangerous team.
Yeah. I mean, the flip side, though, is like we've talked at length about why I am wary of the Chiefs. It's they have the pieces on paper, they're still good. It's just that Super Bowl hangover, man. It's real.
I know it well.
Yeah. and again, there's not a good reason for it. There's always just something, whether it be you get bit by the injury bug, a few key players leave, or you guys they're just shaken and they just don't know how to recover. And I don't know, like that was a pretty bad loss for them last year. It really was.
That one was rough for them.
Yeah.
Like, watching it, it's like it's that what is it? The Simpsons gif where it's basically like, stop it.
Yeah, he's already dead. Yeah.
Yeah, it hit that chord, and it's definitely like even if they stay healthy, I'm not sold that they upgraded that O line either.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's something they addressed, and all you did was you changed the names. Like, I'm not sold that they're better because a lot of them are aging offensive linemen too that you got rid of. So I mean, if you did it to clear cap space, I understand that more, but I don't see it as an upgrade.
Yeah, it's rarely is the solution to offensive line was bunch of alien journeymen. Rarely is that the recipe to success, and and here's why I think that was such a humbling loss for them. It would have been one thing if they weren't lost in a shootout. Like I don't think that would have been hurt as much. They aren't known for their defense. They lost a shootout. Okay, it's that they not only lost it at strength on strength, they got demolished at strength on strength. Coming in, it's like arguably one of the best offenses we've seen in the past decade. And they just absolutely got dismantled. This was, I'd put it on par with the 18-1 Patriots, where it's just you have this rock solid and they just got picked apart. Honestly, I'd say it's worse because at least that was still a close loss for them, really. Yeah. Where this was not. I'd say it was over by the third quarter, really. They were not coming back by then.
Pulling from that comparison, it's like you took a game that was literally one play that made the game, that decided it, that helmet catch. There's one or two plays every Super Bowl that make it, or, even game in general. But this whole game, it was just domination.
Yeah. There was not a one play. You're right. It really was out the gate. Like after the first couple drives, it would just. It's one of those it's like a boxing match. Where, they're even, then all of a sudden one guy lands a punch and it's just snowballs, and they never recover. That's really what happened, and I think that's going to carry over into this season. They're still the Chiefs. They're still going to win some games. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the playoffs. But I also just, historically speaking, they are just as likely to miss the playoffs. And
they're going to have to compete with the Chargers, I think, for the division. I wouldn't be afraid of the Raiders or the Broncos just because of they have massive question marks.
The Broncos are still one of those. I think that's a good segue into that game because here's the thing about the Broncos. It's like Washington. It's like the Chargers where they're one of those teams that they've had the pieces. They like the.
True.
It's coming together. And again,
play.
Yeah. I still don't think Teddy Bridgewater has really had an actual shot because if you really look at his time in Carolina, that was last year was a rough season to take over as a starting quarterback for anyone. They didn't have an off season, and you're going from being a guy who never really had a chance to really be the starter in Minnesota because of freak leg injury. Then you go sitting behind Drew Brees, and no one's going to take over for Drew Brees as a starter unless he's hurt. So, this is, I think, the first time where he's really going to have a chance. Can you actually own up? And the Broncos have been building stuff.
Yeah. They have. I mean, you got Noah Fant at tight end. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, they're a great 1-2 wide receiver, and Melvin Gordon, as long as he can stay healthy, because he has a trend of getting hurt. But, and Gordon's going to be a workhorse, I think, because he can catch out of the backfield and he can run. So, I agree it'll be dangerous. They're just a question mark.
Oh, yeah, no, it is. And...
sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, but I will say, I don't think the Giants are a question mark.
The Giants, I think they're going to be bad.
Yeah.
I've listened to a lot of things. I mean, even watching certain training camp video, like Daniel Jones isn't really the guy.
not.
You're going to have to rely heavily on Saquon.
Yeah. And it looks like he's still questionable.
Yeah.
I understand he's probably going to come back and he's probably going to play, but it's still, he's coming off a serious injury. And, the next man up after him, I loved Booker when he was at Utah. He has not shown the same high-level play in the pros. He has not lived up.
He got a couple flashes because he was with the Broncos.
Yeah, he had moments, but
that's all you got.
And they need their running back because Daniel Jones, again, he is not the guy. It's honestly, if you told me that they decided to start Mike Glennon because he was better, totally buy that. When Mike Glennon is appealing as your young starter quarterback, you got problems.
That he could flash this season, and who knows, maybe he could have turned a corner as well. But if Saquon Barkley's in, that takes some of the pressure off. You could probably get it to Sterling Shepard.
Yeah.
And
you got Shepard and Galladay, and then Slayton. And then I'm like, Ingram's a good tight end. And they have Rudolph too. Rudolph is he can do stuff, but I think it's one of those situations where Jones's success will be fed by the quality of the running back, not the other way around. It's without a solid run game, Jones just isn't gonna. I don't think he's gonna do it. He just hasn't shown enough to me to think that he is able to open up the run game for people.
No, it's this offense that's going to go through the run game, and it's going to set up Jones for success.
Yeah,
unless he just squanders it.
Possible.
Yeah. But going into that, we got another new QB situation with the Saints.
That is, I think, the one I'm most intrigued by.
Me too. Because Winston got LASIK. He could be electric with the Saints.
Yeah. It's, you can say, I've said this multiple times, it's if you really look at his 30 for 30 season, Saints went 7-9. They were still the top passing attack, despite their quarterback throwing as many interceptions and touchdowns. And it was pretty significant lead. So the fact that you can still throw for 5,400 yards with 30 interceptions is impressive. Because that means the other passes were pretty, you were throwing. And especially if you couldn't see.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, the guy just sat behind Drew Brees. And a lot of people say, yeah, he's not even one of the best quarterbacks of our time. But here's the thing. Brees is still quite easily one of, if not the most accurate quarterback we have seen in our lifetimes. I don't care what people say. Brees, that dude is a machine.
On a dime.
Yeah.
Windows all day. It doesn't matter.
And you can't tell me that, I don't know how he could have at least done something to at least scale back somewhat. And even if you cut down by 40% in that offense. However, I think the other problem is, I think the thing that really, though, could derail it, though, is Michael Thomas being out.
I'll agree to a point, because I think Thomas is coming back within the first, 4 weeks, or I guess I'd say 5 weeks, counting out week 1.
Mm-hmm.
But Callaway showed a lot of flashes and promise.
Yeah.
Especially with chemistry with Winston. And then they have their tight end Troutman, who people are saying he might sleep into the mix here and be a big target.
Well, because who was it they had before Troutman? They had, he was a good tight end, but I can't remember who it was.
I want to say he went to the Rams as well.
Any names? Let me see. Because I do remember, no, not Higbee.
Yeah.
Let me see. It's going to bug me now.
With the Chargers.
It was,
Cook?
That was it.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess they lost Cook 2 years
He's
ago.
Chargers.
Okay, yeah. So that's it's. I'm not saying like they're like, oh, they're nothing without Thomas. Like they still have a lot of weapons.
Yeah, Kamara alone.
Yeah, Kamara's Kamara. They still have a pretty solid O-line too. It's just so I think all the pieces are in place for Winston to go off and just take over and maintain a playoff team.
Yep.
But it's still just I don't know. I have no idea how that's going to go.
True, because even with Brees healthy, there was a toss-up if they were going to win, given like Brees was older and they're saying things like can't ball like you could. Understandable, but yeah, you don't know right now with the Saints team, and they're playing a Packers team, which is coming off some of their best seasons. There's a lot of turmoil, but there's still a good roster, roster.
Offensively, that's still like their offensive starters are like, I'm sorry, Aaron Jones I drafted him for a reason. The dude is a beast. Adams is Adams. And even like Valdez and Lazard, they were still good receivers.
Good, yeah. And I mean, the only thing you can count against them is just their history of injury, which is Adams and Jones right now, I feel like is about to hit that.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, no, they are in a weird spot because it's only a matter of time before something happens. And honestly, I do think this is Rodgers' last year with the Packers. I do. Between the contract he signed that basically made it so he can leave next year, it's pretty obvious he was not happy with the situation. So unless they not only go on and run but also get him a bunch of pieces to not just have those runs, but not have the Schottenheimer seasons. I think he'll want to go on somewhere else because he saw how that worked out with Brady. And there are plenty of teams that if you plug in Rodgers, they are immediately a Super Bowl threat. So I don't know. Again, it's one of those. It's not a Super Bowl hangover. What's the opposite of Super Bowl hangover?
I think it's going to depend on how they do this season because they did give him more say. That's why they got, I will say, Cobb right back from the Texans from the Cowboys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was with the Cowboys. They got him back because Rodgers said, I want him back. Threw him under the bus how they treat veterans, of course, like Clay Matthews and everyone else is left. I think if they don't do well, which I think the GM and maybe the office are kind of hoping for, they would be justified in getting rid of him. And be like, get out. We trusted you this season. Have some say. It didn't work. Get out. But I don't see that in him. I see them winning.
Yeah.
It's just at the same time, like, if they don't get over that NFC championship hump, I can see some retooling happening again. And I can see it be like, you know what? I'm over it. I'm done. Bye. and go ready to win.
I mean, he really is. He's at the point in his career, and I get it, where he's really in a Super Bowl bust mentality. If you really think about it, it's like he's guaranteed to be the Hall of Famer. He's guaranteed to be like one of the top quarterbacks of our generation. Like at this point, there's nothing he could do to diminish that part of his legacy. The only real knock is his rings. That's it. He just kept on. It's like, he got stuck in that rut. And I think it's the same thing with he wants to change that. He wants at least one more ring before he leaves. So I really do think if they don't, at the very least, make it to Super Bowl this year, I think he leaves no matter what. Because unless they do a lot of things that get him a lot more pieces, I think.
I think so too. I don't necessarily think it'd take a lot of pieces, but I think it'd take a couple pieces and allowing him to have say in those pieces. If you let him have his say, I think he stays. There's no issues in the offseason, and who knows, maybe they're in the Super Bowl next season. That's if they make it this season. And, That's how I can see them going long term. But short term against the Saints, I think they might get their, booty smacked.
Honestly, I don't think there is. The only result in that game that would surprise me is if it's a close, low-scoring affair, like 13-7. I think at least one of the teams is going to score a lot of points, but
or they both.
It could be either one too. That's the other thing. Yeah,
so I can feel that. I can feel it going either way. Either it ends up in a shootout, or it's low scoring, or I could see the Saints kind of take over and win that first game.
But then again, I also could see the Packers taking over, and because since we don't know where Winston's at, and I'm sorry, Hill is not a QB1. I've been saying that since his college days. That's why it's like I also could see the Packers shutting down the Saints and just going off as well.
Fair. I mean, besides Callaway and Troutman, who's unproven, and Kamara, who else do you have to watch out for in that offense?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, if you disrupt the quarterback and can also contain Kamara.
Yeah, it's...
If they get 30 for 30 Winston and shut down Kamara. Let's see. Ooh. These other two also, I think, are pretty interesting ones. I don't know which one you want to do, but I could see...
Bears, Rams.
Sure, we can do that one because, like, 100%. I think the Rams got the better end of that trade with the Lions.
Oh, completely.
They
made off like bandits, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a Vikings fan, but I've always had a soft spot for Stafford because that dude literally carried that franchise for so long.
I was honestly surprised he didn't leave when Megatron retired.
Oh yeah. But it's like I really don't I would I say there are very few quarterbacks who could have performed as well as he did in the situation he was for so long. I mean, like maybe 2 or 3 because that I don't know how he did what he did with what he had, especially after he lost Megatron.
Yeah.
And then you put him on a stacked Rams team?
Yeah. I mean, he's always had good receivers, and I think he's doing on an even trade when it comes to receivers with Cooper Kupp and Brown as the kind of 1-2, as opposed to his Marvin Jones and his Galladay he had last season. I feel like that's kind of an even wash when it comes to the skill position. The running backs, I feel like he's in the same position without Akers. He has Darrell Henderson Jr., who had a couple games where he went off, but he really wasn't doing great season overall. And the only caveat to that would be Sony Michel, since they traded for him.
Yeah.
He was a really good contributor with the Patriots.
Oh, he's a great pass catching RB. He's great for that.
So they might use him really creatively because he uses that same kind of West Coast system that Shanahan uses. And the only issue is he's less creative with it, which I think is hilarious. But I mean, it's a lot of get him out in the outside and throw a bubble.
Yeah,
but that also
they have the roster for that. Yeah,
Stafford's good at it. Additional golf, and maybe he's gonna throw deep more. And they are the team that kind of scares me a little more within the division, as opposed to Seahawks and Arizona, because I know what I'm getting with both of them, but I don't know what I'm getting from the Rams version of Stafford.
Yeah, well, and that's what it's going to come down to. It's can Stafford keep on? Can he still do as well in a new team, new system? We know he can play even on a terrible team, and it's the Rams have a solid, if not great, roster, just all around. Yeah, I mean, even when you get to their second level, there's a significant drop up, but I think that's more testament of how good some of their starters are, not how bad the second string are. It's we could talk about there's a huge drop off if you shut down Donald, but that's because Donald is he is easily one of the best defensive players there is right now.
And I mean, you saw it last season against the Packers. To me, I thought as long as Donald was in the game, they have a chance. They are probably going to win.
Oh, yeah.
He came out of the game, couldn't go back in. I'm like, okay, the Packers won.
Yep. It really is. I remember when there was a lot of people who were mad that Donald got the defensive MVP over TJ Watt. they're starting all these stats. I was like, here's the thing. Yeah, Watt had comparable stats to Donald except for one key statistic. Donald was triple teamed or double teamed, and he still won at like a 60% rate. So not only was he triple teamed at like double team triple teamed like 3 to 4 times the rate that Watt was, he still put up better stats and had a better win rate against those.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where I was like, yeah, you could, when you even triple teaming the guy isn't guaranteed to stop him. He is always a threat to make a play.
Completely. And that's why I was really impressed, ridiculously impressed last season. I think it was School, who's actually out injured right now for the Niners. It was one offensive lineman who handled Donald one entire game.
That is amazing.
Only a few plays did he get tight end help or running back help, in a double team. But for the most part, between 80 and 95% of the game, it was just one-on-one. And he held 0 sacks. And it was a big thing. After the game, they showed it off, and they're like, he held Donald.
Yeah, that is not something many people can claim.
Yeah, I mean, he may have had an off day. Who knows? Yeah. Still, you're an elite player.
Yeah. Donald on an off day is still better than most D tackles on a good day.
True.
That's reality. So, I mean, so if you had to pick one for one, I think the Rams would be the favorite. But again, the Bears have pieces.
They do. Mooney, Dalton is still a decent quarterback. Even if they work in Fields into certain packages to try and confuse them. Their running back situation is a little iffy to me.
They don't have any stars, but they have contributors. It's one of people say everyone has said don't draft a Bears running back for fantasy because they have a committee. No one's really outshining anyone, but that a lot of people take it to mean oh, that means it's not good. No, it's just they're all plug and play.
I mean, right now Tariq Cohen is listed as out, so Montgomery's going to get everything. So if you got Montgomery, throw him in.
Except for they're still probably going to be throwing in Williams and Herbert. It really is. I think they are a running back by committee system right now. Because unless Montgomery goes off, I think those other guys are going to get just much playing time. And then, I mean, they have some solid receivers. It's just a question of can they live up to it. And then, yeah, and then that D-line.
D-line's good. You got your Khalil Mack. He's going to anchor that thing.
Which actually, he's not the anchor. So I've been I don't know if you noticed this. Since the trade, his first year, he was still Mack. But there's been a pretty steep drop. The key is actually Hicks. Compare how they've done when he was playing versus when he was out. It's because he opens up so much. He's one of those guys where not only is he capable of getting someone, if you go focus on Mack, it opens up him. But he also eats up blocks. He is someone you have to scheme for. And that's, I think, what works. But also, it's one of those, when Mack's out, he's still made plays. When he's been out, Mack has not made as many plays.
Yeah, that's fair. Because I did notice that drop-off, too. And I'm like, well, maybe the Raiders got the better end of this deal right now. At least I was...
I mean, who did they even get for Mack? I don't even remember.
No one. They got, I think, 2 first-round picks.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if they got either that or they just haven't used them well, because I don't know if the Raiders got the first.
Yeah.
No.
Because they got those picks for Mack, and I think they got another first round for Amari Cooper from Dallas. And that hasn't panned out well for him either.
No.
They've been struggling with draft.
I mean, there was a lot of questionable choices by the Raiders, which that's a Monday night game, so we're not quite there yet. But yeah, this one's, I think, because again, nothing against Fields. It's just historically, OSU QBs just haven't made the transition. Maybe he bucks the trend. But when it comes to long-standing trends like that, I'm definitely of the prove me wrong, not prove me right, but those sort of things. So, Nick Foles, he's terrible except for the few times when he's not. When he is, that it's the right time. So,
fair.
I would lean towards the Rams winning this one, but I also could see it being a slugfest just because you got new off QBs against some solid D lines.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling too. And also with Stafford, he has a big arm. I could see McVay wanting to try and show it off, and maybe he holds the ball a little too long and takes a couple sacks. To roll with you, I could see it be a slugfest, or the Rams just take off with it.
Yeah, and it's honestly, I could see one or both those teams being a playoff team, if not winning their division. They have the tools. And, well, yes, they both have some good teams in the division. There's also enough doubt about the other teams in the division that it wouldn't surprise me. So, I honestly could very well see this being a rematch, too, in the playoffs.
I'm less on board with that, just because ever since Matt Nagy won Coach of the Year, he's been on a super steep downward
spiral. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can blame it on the quarterback and everything, but he got really cocky, and I feel like it's going to depend on if he's been humbled or not, if they can make that playoff push or not, and he can get back to coaching rather than being like, I know it all.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's not something I would bet on, but it's also Lions are the Lions. The Vikings, you know how pessimistic I am. And while, the Packers are still like the team to beat, they haven't really been dethroned. There's still enough turmoil that I could see them stumbling. So they could take the division. It's like, I still think that they are still the second place team until proven otherwise, just by virtue of they still have enough pieces that they can do enough to make the playoffs. Especially if the Vikings are as inconsistent as I see them potentially being. And the Rams are still I think the bare minimum is I still think the Rams will worst be a wild card, if not win their division, just because they have, it's like the Chiefs. On paper, you look at that roster and you go, how did that team not make the playoffs? So that's why I think it's a potential playoff preview. That doesn't mean it's far. It could be a wild card, but I still think it's a playoff game. Now, the next one, on the other hand, I'm not so sure on. Because these are both teams with a lot of question marks around.
I mean, I see Baltimore at least being a wild card.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on if they don't regress in that offense. Because they still have, I think, Greg Roman as offensive coordinator. And all he's been doing is just recycling that Kaepernick playbook.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at those rosters. It's hard to tell. It really is, because they're both teams that have struggled. But
yeah, I mean, the Ravens always bolster a top 10 defense. So the defense is going to keep them in the game. They have to rely heavily on the run right now. Their number one is Gus Edwards.
Oh, we skipped over a game. That's how I was confused. I was like,
Oh, yeah, I was already into the Raiders-Ravens because you said the next game.
Well, okay. Yeah, so no, we can. That makes a lot more sense. I was like, but okay.
What's going on?
Yeah, that one is... That one I'm not as iffy on. I do think the Ravens are the team to beat there, but the Raiders, they have...
they could surprise some people.
They just have not... I don't know how or why they have failed to live up to expectations.
I think it begins
so poorly.
I think it's all Gruden.
Yeah, I can see that, but it's... So I saw an interesting thing. It's I remember Josh Jacobs' first season especially. Dude was a stud.
Yeah.
Then I actually saw I don't know. I think Matt Bear did a breakdown of his stats, especially over the last 3 seasons. He's been trend I think it was last year. He was actually in the bottom half of running backs in fantasy.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's really just petered out. Whether that's because that whole team's dysfunctional, or maybe he would just a flash in the pan. I don't know. And I think that's the main reason why, because you really look at like when they were really clicking is when he was solid. And they have pieces that they could be good in passing game, but they also really need that run game to be a threat. Otherwise, as soon as they realize if they're one dimensional, they're not going to make it. They just don't have enough to overcome that, I think. And the Ravens are the Ravens. Those guys are always a threat to score. I will say though, I know it's preseason, but let me tell you, that preseason game where my boy Tyler Huntley accounted for 5 touchdowns. Like, here's the thing, like, I think the Ravens are the only team he can find success for, because he is another Lamar Jackson. That is how he was in college. That is his style. And apparently...
it works.
Yeah.
I feel like they need help more with the receivers, though. You got Sammy Watkins and Marquise Brown. And Brown kind of tapered off last season, too, I feel. With production, targets. He's having a rough go at it. So, I don't know. The Ravens, to me, have some question marks, and most of that just stems from the skill position running back and wide receiver.
Yeah.
Defense is always good. Lamar Jackson, I think, is solid, but his offensive coordinator is not helping him. I think they'll beat the Raiders, but that's mostly because they used a very aged system.
Yeah.
Because I looked at the offensive coordinator, and I'm like, Greg Olson, what are you talking about?
Wait, what?
That's his name. His name's Greg Olson.
Oh, so it's not that Greg Olson.
I'm very sure it's not that Greg Olson. But it's like, I haven't heard of him. I'm sure he's worked with Gruden in the past. And Gruden's, as far as I can remember, he's a big offensive guy. But I know he talked about implementing newer styles into the offense, but I haven't seen it. And I think that partially shows Jacobs. He's not really scheming him open to run. He's kind of asking him to just shoot into the A gap or bounce to the outside. So it's him asking players to perform within a offense versus scheming for the players he has. And I haven't seen him scheme players' strengths.
Yeah. I mean, that always makes me so sad. Part of it because that's, I think, how Zimmer is. It's when teams have really great players and they squander because they force them to fit their scheme, not adapt the scheme to fit the players. It's like, like Zimmer is obsessed with, we got to run the ball. We got to be a running team. How do you not go, you know what? Let's be a pass first team. We paid $84 million for a quarterback. We have these crazy receivers. The same thing. It's like, Carr's, I think, a good quarterback who's just wasted in some crappy spots.
Wasted. Like that first season with Gruden wanted him to work into his system. And it was very similar, even going back as far as when he was there, he had Marquez King as a kicker. And apparently that's what messed over Marquez King a little bit, is because he wanted him to switch, but Devo went to the Broncos, and the coaching screwed him over there because they changed his kicking style, injured him because of it, because his body's moving in a different way. And I think that is equating a little bit to Carr, where he had those growing pains because you have to fit the scheme. I'm not going to scheme to you.
Yeah.
And I think he's grown into it as far as like him adapting. And that's helpful, but I don't think it's a scheme that fits on the roster. It's
helpful, but it's not sustainable.
No, it's a mediocre system. I feel that, yes, won him maybe the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, where he had a loaded roster on offense and defense. Didn't have to ask a lot of the offense because that defense was going to keep the score so low.
Yeah. And also, he played against his team.
Yeah. He knew the team inside and out.
Yeah. It's... You know what I would be okay with seeing? I would be okay with seeing like Derek Carr going to a better team and like having a renaissance, like pulling a Tannehill. I'd be okay with that because I have nothing against Carr. And honestly, it's just, again, you look at the guys they have, and they really should be so much better than they are. It's really sad.
You have a 1-2 in Jacobs and Drake, because Drake looked great with the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Ruggs, Say Jones has shown that he can do well. Willie Snead did really well in Baltimore, and he's second fiddle to Braylon Edwards. And Hunter Renfro's fairly promising.
Oh, yeah. Renfro's been doing great, solid. Well, Waller's a great tight end. It's on paper, yeah. They just, I'd be okay with the Raiders coming together because they're one of those teams where it's like, I have no ill will against them. So I'm like, you know what? Okay, sure, cool. They come together, and especially because they're one of those teams that should be so much better than they have been, and they've just been squandering so much.
They should be competing with the division.
Exactly. I want to see teams with a lot of talent lose because they're getting beat, not because they're being poorly mismanaged.
I think that's their issue, and there's just a few teams I feel like that's the same thing. Like the Bears are one, but I think they're being mismanaged, and I think if they had a change in coordinators, as far as offense goes, like I'm not sure about the defense, but definitely offense, because they need to take advantage of these dudes they have.
Yeah.
Especially Carr. Like you get Carr and you scheme some plays around Renfro and Ruggs.
Come on. Yeah.
Dynamic. And the same thing even going to Minnesota. Same thing. Like if you scheme pass first, run second, because then Cook becomes like a home run running back.
He becomes a Kamara.
He does, because he can catch really well out of the backfield. So you can use him in a passing game and like just expand your thought process on what the running game is. So that you throw on the perimeter, which I know they already do, I feel. But
yeah,
scheme it out a little bit better. Like you have this great deep threat in Jeffers. Justin Jefferson, and then Thielen.
It's Thielen.
Yeah, he's Thielen.
Yeah, not only that, you have BC Johnson was good, and you have, granted he's out this year, but Irv Smith Jr. was a great tight end before he got hurt, and then even then, so that was, I think, one of the big reasons why Rudolph got traded. It's not necessarily his contract. It's they talk about his stats weren't great. It's because they turned him into a blocking tight end.
Oh, yeah,
and that'd be like having someone like imagine if you had like Gonzalez back in the day going you're great with catching balls, but we want you to block more.
You could take any of the top tight ends around and just say that about them. You're Kelsey, you're Kittle.
Yeah.
Fuller. Yeah, we're not going to throw you the ball. We're not going to call your number when we need that first down or that win. You're going to block.
Yeah. Again, it's not that they shouldn't be blocking, it's that you shouldn't primarily be using them as a blocker. That is a mismatched use of their skills. And again, it's adapting your scheme to the players you have.
Making them do it, because of course you don't want them to assume, they're going to throw the ball in because he's out here.
Yeah.
Definitely, you can't have him blocking on 100% of the snaps a game.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially when he's a solid, when someone some of the solid pass catcher, when you actually throw them the ball, they tend to catch it. Why would you not take advantage of that? Speaking of scheming, I think we should move on to our last match because it includes the ultimate schemer. The guy who, as I've said, I think arguably knows more. He could probably write the NFL rulebook from memory in BB.
That New England game.
Yeah. They are a team that I think a lot of people were ready to write off and say he's done. But I don't know how you can say that. Yeah.
You can't. Because I think we even spoke about before we started this, he kept them in the game on defense without a majority of the starters. 1/3 gone. He didn't have any skilled players on offense with the receivers.
Mm-hmm.
They do with what they had by running first, and they're still competitive for the most part.
Yeah, well, no one can come up with schemes. Every season it seems like he has found some of the wrinkle where you're like, what? Where half the time it gets flagged because it's in a gray area.
I do love his defensive schemes. I used him all the time in Madden because he was the only guy who had one scheme that was called, I think, Prowl. Basically, the defensive line didn't go down and do a stance; they were all standing, and they shifted positions. They kept a motion. And I remember playing guys online, like guys I knew in person, and they were like, "What was that?
What happened?
Where did you get that? That's not the Niners playbook." I'm like, no, it's not. I have a better defensive playbook at the time. I can run a vanilla offense, but win with that defense is something different.
Yep. Well, and especially if you really look at their success, way too many people contributed up to Brady, especially after last year, when it's like no other quarterback has won as many Super Bowls with top 10 defenses as Brady. No one. And Brady isn't the defensive coordinator. That's Bill. Those defenses were Bill. And especially if you look at the situation they had last year, like between the COVID opt-outs and the people they lost in injury, it's like it didn't matter who you put at that quarterback. They were going to struggle. I mean, really, they had a worse team than they had the year prior when they had Brady, and they still struggled.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too. It's like it didn't matter that Brady was there. And yeah, you complain like he didn't have receivers, but then it's pretty obvious like he's not the thing that's completely elevating the team.
Yeah. Yep.
He went to Tampa where the team was there. They just needed him. Or any quarterback who could not get interceptions.
I have had people tell me that only Brady could. I'm like, you're telling me that if you put Breeze or Rodgers or Mahomes or Watts in that position, they wouldn't have been in the playoffs, if not in a Super Bowl? Come on, guys.
Any elite quarterback, a Super Bowl. I think even any like mid-tier quarterback, playoffs heating for that Super Bowl. Like I said, just a tail. Like
I'm sorry, I bet you if you put even Cousins or Fitzpatrick, they were still at least a playoff team.
Yep.
They're not probably winning the Super Bowl with those two because those guys aren't elite. But it's people really underestimate, especially their defense, how good their defense was in 2019. Yeah. So I'm sorry, and maybe not this year because I still think he had a lot to get together. But I think by next year, Patriots will finish their rebuild, and that's the other reason why I think the Bills have a very short window of enjoy it while they can, because until he has been proven to be consistently dropping the ball, you can't bet against the guy. You can't.
No, you can't. And I agree. Like the Bills' window is small with how good the Patriots can end up being. He has the quarterback he wants in Mac Jones. I'm not 100% sold that Mac Jones is going to be like electric or like the next Tom Brady. He's going to be Mac Jones, and I think he's going to have up and downs completely. And I don't know how I feel about him getting the starting nod and Newton being cut.
That one I think was the right call, just because, and this is why when I really thought about it. So here's the thing: I think part of the struggles was that he realized that they had Newton. He was a quarterback last year, but the other problem was Newton is not the style quarterback for his system, his scheme. But not only that, but also not for the players he had. I think he was smart. That is one of the situations where I understand why he didn't adapt the scheme to cater around Newton. It's just because he couldn't. You're taking, a mobile QB and put him into what has been essentially a pocket passing team for 2 decades.
and Daniels did what he could.
Yeah.
But if he's not, I mean, I'm sure he just busted out the Tebow manual, but that only got him so far with the Broncos.
Yeah. Well, but then the other part of that is and that's the other reason why I think I understand why it's. First off, it wasn't a huge loss. It was probably cheaper to come now than wait. And this is the other thing. Is think about this. So you have Mac Jones. He is your heir apparent, but he is a totally different QB than Cam. which means anytime you swap from one to the other, you're either having to have one be mismatched or retool your offense. And if he's clear with the direction you're going, that leaves Cam as the odd man out.
Yep. Well, that makes sense. You keep Brian Hoyer, who's still a veteran, to mentor him, be his backup. Who fits
I think it's Stidham, is because I don't see Hoyer on their list unless he's out. They just have Jones and Sidman listed.
It's the last preseason game I watched. They had Hoyer out there. Yeah, it's Stidham, who's out, so they only have one QB right now.
Yeah. Which, that's a bold move. But then again, this is Bill, so we'll be surprised.
It's a bold move, God.
Yeah. But again, it's like, I mean, they brought in pieces that if Mac Jones is solid, they could make waves.
Yeah, definitely, because that defense is still going to be a top at least 15, if not top 10. And they've made upgrades where they needed, which is receiver.
Mm-hmm.
They've kind of stayed the same running back, and yeah, they'll be competitive for the division, I think.
But then Dolphins are another one of those. I don't know, because if you look at them, they seem like they should be a pretty high-powered offense.
Yeah. And you got, when Fuller's back, he's going to be great.
He's Fuller.
At least I would hope. Yeah, he's Fuller. People are high on Jalen Waddle, who's a rookie. Devontae Parker, I think he's a very solid receiver. And then I think they're lower on Tua than they should be.
Yeah. And I think it's because he's been inconsistent. He hasn't proven that he can do it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, Myles Gaskin is a solid running back. And
yes.
Gesicki, though, like, he's the one who, like, he has been living up to, like, his potential, but that could just be, who knows.
Yeah, if he goes lights out, they have a dynamic offense with the dual threat quarterback and solid receiving core, tight end, and a running back they can count on.
Yeah. And then the question becomes how good is their defense, which their defense has shown flashes in the last few seasons.
Let's see, you got Xavier Howard. As far as I remember, they have a decent secondary. Even after they traded away Minkah Fitzpatrick, they held their own that season without him.
Yeah.
So,
like, I mean, I think that overall, this is the interesting is because you really look at the amount of big names that change teams, not just big names, like big key players, especially at the quarterback position. That's what I think makes this season so interesting. Is first you had last year, which really it wasn't. It's hard to base stuff off of last year because it was such a weird season.
Yeah,
that combined with so many, like, you know, big quarterbacks on big teams. There's really only like maybe one or two teams I feel like, yeah, they're not going to do well. I'd say arguably, like, really, I would only say Texans and Giants. I don't see those two teams doing much. But every other team has enough potential. I think. Yeah.
Because the kind of scraping that bottom is the Dolphins, and I kind of feel the Eagles, where they're just lots of question marks, but they seem like they should do well.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least be competitive.
Yeah. There's just so many teams that have like enough question marks for like could go on a tear. And again, like every season, there's always like one to three teams that were absolutely terrible that have a great season. And it could be half the league could be one of those three teams. It really could. And I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
Which is also why I'm glad I'm not a gambling man, because
yeah. So and I got invited to join a pick'em league, and I'm like, no.
Yeah. I don't even
right now.
know who to pick.
No, I don't. I see the league as being very competitive this year.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think the only safe Super Bowl bet this right now, and I just say it's because statistically it's the safest bet, is that the Chiefs don't win it. Simply because there's been only three other teams who've done that. after losing Super Bowl, who won it the next year. So it's not to say the Chiefs aren't good. It's just that is a huge body. That's a huge amount of games to base that off of. But then again, I said that about the Patriots last Super Bowl, and we saw how that turned out. So
we'll see.
Yeah.
Ooh. Hi.
Oh, Leia.
Well, we've made it through each matchup.
I mean, there was a lot of matchups.
A lot of time over.
Yep. We really got to start budgeting more time for these.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's been an hour or less. They've all been at least an hour and a half.
Yeah. It was hour and a half feels like the sweet spot, but yeah, there's a lot to go over. Yeah. Especially with it being the first week.
Yeah. I think by week 3 or 4 we'll have a lot more clarity on those question marks, though.
Definitely.
Which
excited. Thursday start the season.
Yeah, which, man, 2 days. Whew.
Good times.
And then I got college too. I got the Holy War this weekend.
Oh.
Can the Utes extend their streak to 10 straight years? I sure hope so.
Now, maybe next week.
Yeah, I might be real sad next week if they don't extend it to 10 straight years. I might be real sad because
they played BYU.
Yep, at BYU, and they struggled more than they should have in their opening game. So I don't know, but BYU is also they had to rebuild a lot. They had Zach Wilson, and losing your heir apparent, your guy is really hard to recover from, especially at the college level. So that one's good. That one's iffy. Fingers crossed.
Well, hope the best. Every team, except for the teams going against our teams.
Yeah, that's how it. Yeah. Everyone could do great except for the Bengals and the Lions, right?
They cannot do great. Go ahead and end it now.
Well, it's been a pleasure, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, that would be talking to myself.
I'd watch it.
I had set up Zuko on the other cam.
Now that I would definitely watch that. You do like one of those around the horn things. You just got Leia, Zuko, and Fury in the other boxes.
Yep. Talking
overnight success.
Sports. Yeah, there we go. New idea. Market it. Have a good night.